One thing that I always bring with me is do it today, tomorrow it might be too late. It's just putting like the pressure on acting and executing rather than waiting. Take action, do it. That's a very good thing to just have with you on a daily basis.
How many of the current CEOs at outdoor brands have held that position for more than 20 years? The answer is just 3. And today I'm chatting with one of those, Martin Axelhed, the CEO of Fjällräven, the iconic Swedish outdoor brand. We chat about Martin's 32-year career at Fjällräven, from his start on the retail floor as a sales associate to becoming the CEO more than 20 years ago. Martin shares the ups and some of the painful downs of that journey, and also tells the story about the surprising conversation with the founder in a hut in the Arctic Circle that led to Martin becoming CEO. My name's Dan Trapp. This is Sports and Outdoor Mentors. And if you like what we're doing, please hit the like button and subscribe or follow. Thanks a lot. Martin, 32 years with Fjällräven, starting off literally on the shop floor, working your way up through multiple different roles, obviously sales, event management, marketing, product, country leadership, and then just over 20 years ago, moving into the CEO role. An amazing career you've had. At the same time, I think for the last 13 or so years, maybe a little bit more, you've also been EVP of Phoenix Brands Division, plus 3 daughters. So impressive career journey. But maybe before we get on to that, for the people that maybe don't know the brand, how would you describe Fjällräven in one sentence?
Thank you for the introduction. 2 sons, 1 daughter. Just a correction. Anyway, that's the same responsibility anyhow. Yeah, Fjällräven is originating from the north of Sweden. We were founded by a man with name Åke Nordin, passed away 2013. He started the company in 1960 in Örnsköldsvik, next to the Baltic Sea up in the north. And we have since then developed the company from being a very Swedish-oriented brand to a multinational brand with presence in more than 70 markets across the globe. We do very much outdoor equipment for all different activities, but very focused on trekking and hiking. Additionally, we have added biking recently. And then as all brands in the industry, we are also bridging over to everyday use.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll come back to the brand a little bit later, but maybe, and even before we get onto your story a little bit, so it's February 2026 as we sit here today. When you look at the rest of 2026, what are you looking forward to from a personal and from a business point of view? And maybe also, what are you worried about or nervous about?
Yeah, I think I share this with many leaders in the outdoor industry, and we have said the same for the last 3 years. Yeah, now we probably see a stronger appetite on consumption. We have crossed our fingers for a better and more predictive supply chain, less changes in directions of big leaders, etc. I hope for the same. 2026, we see more of a light in the tunnel when it comes to consumption. I also believe that we have seen a shift from the very high interest in outdoor during COVID, and then overproduction and all the over inventory we have seen in retail and at brands now phased out. And I think we are kind of restarting on a good level for brands and retail. So it took a while to reset, but I have big beliefs that 2026 will be a year where we are coming back to some kind of, more base level and growing again.
Yeah.
Even though outdoor industry as is not growing at this moment. So there is quite a few challenges. You asked me for what I also see and what I'm worried about. Yeah, I'm worried about big changes and disruption in different parts of the value chain, where we have recently seen what happens when some leaders are changing the balance in business in between different regions. And the tariffs in US, for instance, have hit hard on many, many brands, and you have to adapt to that. That is still a challenge. I believe that all brands are managing that in a smart way to absorb parts of it and not push it forward all the way to the consumers. But still, everyone needs to act and protect their margins and profit. I really hope that we can also move forward with a more natural pattern in weather. Probably not, but I hope for a colder winter next year than this year. And yeah, there are quite a few things that worries, or I'm not worried really. I'm more like, it's part of the business. So
yeah,
it's part of the daily concerns.
Yeah. I wasn't going to go here actually immediately, but I think to your point, I think you've raised several points there that are connected to the fact that the world is very volatile now across many aspects. And I remember when I was working for Hoka back in 2015, I think, and we did training on, what it was like to work in a VUCA world, mm-hmm. Basically volatile, uncertain. I can't remember what the C and the A were, but anyway. And then it was something, okay, that you plan for, something happens, it's uncertain, it's volatile, but then it kind of goes back to normal. But I think whether it was pre-COVID or certainly since COVID, it feels like volatility is actually just the way it is now. So how, as a leader, have you and how has the business had to kind of adapt to that reality of volatility kind of being the norm?
I would say that the horizon of planning is much shorter. I believe that many brands had their classic 5-year plans and 3-year plans. That has been shortened dramatically, not only for us, but for many in the industry, I think. And that's a balance act. Being long-term, having a long-term goal for all the employees and having like an aim to go for. At the same time, being extremely flexible and fast in changing based on the changes that happen so fast. So it is an interesting balance. So shortening that horizon and getting acceptance in the organization for that, despite we said half a year ago that this is the direction, we need to change. And that's very challenging for a lot of people. So that's something we work on a regular basis to keep that or improve that mindset.
Yeah, yeah. In that situation, I think that kind of, transparency and communication are then super important for that. But as you said, I think if you have that long-term vision, then, and people can kind of stay focused on that, I think that's obviously always very positive.
It is, and that's a necessity, I would say, where brands with long-term and strong ownership has a better chance, I would say, to be clear on the vision, not changing because new owners or whatever. I also believe that we need to have a situation where change is not seen as negative. And when change happens, it's also extreme importance that people in the company understand why we do a change. Because that's something that I have seen many times, that you just take a decision because it's almost of a panic characteristic.
Yeah.
But I think many brands, including us, learned a lot during COVID. That was crisis management, where we took away a lot of good learnings.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. In 1994, I believe you started working in the Fjällräven store in Stockholm city centre. I'm interested, is there anything from those early retail days that you learned during those early retail days that are still kind of relevant today?
I think doing business in the outdoor industry means that you're satisfying a customer's needs for a specific activity. I learned very early that a customer that is coming to you in a store is there for a reason, there for advice, there for getting help to satisfy the needs. And I think what I really brought with me from a business perspective and from a passion perspective is that if you advise properly and give the customer good advice and direction, it also gives you not only a satisfied customer, but it gives you a much better opportunity to upsell on that customer. So I think that is still something in my spine that I bring with me into all different discussions, regardless if it is a customer meeting or if it is changing an e-commerce platform or whatever it is. It's very much based on how can you make sure that you give consumers, or as we call them, users, best possible advice that can add value to them, but also increase our sales.
Yeah. So then there's a strong, let's say, family connection as well with your family to the brand and also to another Nordic outdoor brands. So would you share a little bit the story, obviously, about the fact that I believe your father actually worked for Fjällräven and even you took over from him. But so, yeah, would you mind sharing that story a little bit?
Yeah, I was born in an outdoor-oriented family, so I was happy. And I had also the great luck of having a father working for this company way back, started early and was working as a salesman. And he opened the door for me to actually get that job in our flagship store downtown Stockholm, my first job at the company. That took me to a situation where I performed well in that store and had also the luck to meet the founder, Åke Nordin. Run into him one day in the store and he asked me who I was and I introduced myself and he said, "Great, you have a good name. Half my family has the same name. So let's leave this room. I have more important things to do and you should sell." Okay, good. So I left the room and we didn't talk to each other more than that in that moment. But later on, and that was actually 1997, he called me because then my father had taken for me, a very important decision to leave the company.
Yeah.
And he left it for Norröna, his dream job and his dream brand. And because, from many perspectives, they are based on the same basis and values. So Åke called me and he said, your father is leaving, but he is leaving to the only brand in the industry that is not a competitor. So it's okay. And I want you to join and take over his position. Call me tomorrow when you have decided. So,
wow.
That's kind of a shocking scenario. I had a quick discussion with my father. I slept on it. And then I called him back the day after and said, I go for it. So since then, I have been part of the company, representing the company. And in the beginning, I worked as a salesman in the north of Sweden, meaning meeting the original customers, the retailers, first or second generation that actually started to sell Fjällräven in the north. So it was a brilliant way of getting to understand this brand from the root, from the beginning, and also starting to have a more regular dialogue with the founder, Mr. Nordin himself. So my father made a fantastic job. My mother also added to this because I asked Åke once, so why did you choose me? And he said, I love your father and I met your mother and she's a good woman. So that must be a good outcome. Simple, easy. And that was how he judged me on distance. Yeah.
Seems to have been a good judgment based on the fact that many, many years later, you're sitting here still.
Yeah.
How was that dynamic at home? It must have been strange when because was your dad working in a sales role for Norröna at the time? So you were both doing similar roles for different brands.
They had decided to launch Norröna in Sweden to a more broad scale. So he was doing that, establishing Norröna from scratch pretty much. But then we were competitors in a way because we were competing over the same money in the stores, but the two brands are complementing each other very well. I did ask a lot of practical questions in the beginning. I was supported, but never over-supported. So it was just a good dimension between me and my father. And it is, as you know, traveling as a salesman when you're young and your friends are still home and partying and doing things and you need to go early or late Sunday or early Monday morning. You're staying over the weekend in order to be on the district early morning Monday to get the next customers. It is a lot of emptiness and loneliness where you need to, have some kind of input from outside and also the motivation. You need to drive it yourself, but also get it from somewhere. And my father was a very good source for that, given that he has been in the industry for so long time, knowing the customers, knowing the roads, knowing the different, shortcuts.
Yeah, that's right. Back in those days, a lot of those jobs was about kind of being as efficient as possible on the road. I remember when I was a sales rep, in the back of my car, I had a big box of all of the maps of all of the key towns and cities in the UK that I was visiting. It's crazy to think about that now. When I tell my son that, he thinks I'm completely crazy. He's like, you carried maps.
No GPS? Okay.
Exactly.
How do you find the spot?
Exactly. Well, I do wonder sometimes that now.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So then after that move into sales, then I think over the years, you then dabbled in different areas of the business, as we said, events, marketing, product development, leading the country, the Sweden from a business point of view as well. But then in 2004, you had another, I would say, quite unusual discussion with the founder. Unusual maybe in terms of the timing. It's such a great story. I'll let you share it.
But I appreciate that you bring that up because it's emotional for me as well. And it is something that made a big change in my life. So if I just go back a little bit, Åke Nordin was still sitting very much in his office in Örnsköldsvik, which is on the way when you go north and when you go south on my district.
Okay.
So every now and then I dropped by and had discussions. I even tried to negotiate my salary once. Didn't turn out well because he just told me that if I increase your salary, you just start to use more of your money. So I do you a favor. I keep it as it is. So simple as that. Anyway, I had good dialogue, but also found out that he started to add responsibility on me in different areas. And in retrospective, it was kind of a sophisticated trainee program, I think.
Okay.
Which he, with a very long-term idea, put on me in an early stage. So I think he decided quite early that, okay, this guy and maybe a few more, I want to keep them long-term. I want to develop them and educate them for the future.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of things, and I again asking, like, shall I then stop with something? No. You do as I always did. You work daytime, you travel nighttime, and then you can manage. So it's an easy equation. So I pushed hard for quite a long time, many years. I left the sales and went all into product development and design. So I worked hard with the hard goods, meaning backpacks, sleeping bags, and tents for quite some time. We, meaning me and Mr. Nordin himself, traveled extensively in Far East because he was very early in moving production from Europe or Scandinavia, Finland, and out to the Asian countries. So he had tremendous experience from culture, business, production, development. So we went for weeks together, going in the same flight, going in the same taxis, sleeping in the same room, falling asleep with him talking, waking up with him talking.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, such an energy from his side, day and night, always like business development, teaching, everything. So it was an amazing time. In that time, it was more like, yeah, this is how it is, I guess. But I mean, what he did in retrospective is absolutely amazing. So as you said, I had a big moment 2004. We were doing something we call Fjällräven Polar, which is it's a dog sled event going from the Arctic Sea down to Jukkasjärvi. We were participating not on dog sleds, but on snowmobiles. So we were stopping every now and then, discussing different opportunities and businesses and life. That was his highlight of the year. So he always came back to that event, and we were traveling through that wilderness year after year. But 2004, we were sharing a small hut. The fire was up. I can see it in front of me right away. And we were sitting next to each other in a sleeping mode. We were sitting actually in each sleeping bag, just preparing for the night. And he said, okay, Martin, now I'm going to ask you a question. Are you willing to take over the brand when that time comes? And I said, yeah. And he shook my hand, and he had a very distinct look, and he said, okay, good. That was it. That night, 2004. Then things developed quicker than I think we all expected. So we had a big change. We had some things and sickness and stuff going on in the leadership. So already 2005, we were hunting together, and after the dinner on that Sunday, he took me aside and said, yes, I will put you in charge of the company. I will convince the board tomorrow, and then it's you running it. So that was 2005. He had his oldest son, very engaged in the company, Martin Nordin, same name. He is now the working chairman and the person behind the Phoenix Outdoor strategy and the structure of Phoenix Outdoor, still very active in the company. So it was, of course, a balance between his part of the company and me running Fjällräven. So that was something he had talked through before this decision, but then he had to convince the board. I know in retrospective that they were, of course, very critical to a person 29 years old taking over and getting the full responsibility of natural reasons, they were kind of critical. But he convinced them, and he did. And now I'm coming back to something that I have been considering many times, because sooner or later it will be my time. What he did from a succession perspective, founding the company, living the company, sacrificing for the company, and from one day to another, he handed over the responsibility to 100%, never interfering, never taking a contradictional decision in front of anyone, just supporting. Of course, giving me very clear directions behind the scenes, challenging me on details, challenging me on decisions and many things behind the scenes, but never in front of people. So I got, despite my age, I got very quickly the trust from the organization, because they could go to me, they couldn't drown me and go to Åke and get another decision. So again, when I'm reflecting on this, it's such a big, bold move from a person that was controlling it, founding it, and just, boom.
Absolutely.
So now I'm very, grateful to that. And also that date, 2004, was like enough for him. It was a handshake, and let's do it.
The way you told the story there, it was, he asked you, you said yes, and you shook hands. But I mean, was that like a quick and an easy decision for you?
Yeah.
I'm guessing then had you already maybe not considered it, but had that somehow as an aspiration, as a dream maybe at that stage?
Very clear dream for me. I have actually saved my black book from the time when I was a salesman in the North, where you had a lot of time for yourself sometimes. And I have written down that becoming head of Sweden, becoming head of Europe, and then taking this position was part of my personal development agenda, but never shared. So we probably understood each other in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, that somehow ongoing coaching, mentoring that was happening seemingly just naturally was probably, at least on his side, maybe not so natural. It was, he had a vision in mind.
It's great to talk about it, because you tend to park it a bit, but it is an impressive decision, and also a very bold decision. And then not just putting it on a paper, but actually executing and making sure that it becomes a success.
As you said, I mean, you probably have many more years to go, but also that sets also quite a high expectation for you, because somehow you've got to replicate that one way or another.
Right now, I have the honor and the pleasure to also work very closely to the third generation. So both Evelina and Carl Nordin are part of the business. They are contributing. Carl is now back on some studies, but he's coming back after summer. And Evelina is in Fjällräven operationally. So we have a very close dialogue. And of course, there will be a day when things are moving over to the third generation or someone else. Depends, of course, on how things are developing. But it's really a great pleasure to have the third generation now coming into the company.
Talking about generations of ownership, or from the founder of a company, and I'm going to refer now again to a brand that we already talked about, which is Neurona, we touched on earlier on, because when I was doing some research for our discussion today, it kind of dawned on me that as a CEO for more than 20 years now, 21, 22 years, I think, there are only two other CEOs that are active today as a CEO within the outdoor industry that have held their position for more than 20 years. One is Jürgen, so the fourth generation owner and CEO of Neurona, and the other is Tim Boyle. So owner, CEO, or main shareholder, owner of Columbia Sportswear, obviously. So that's quite a small club. There, and I think Jürgen. I think pretty well.
I have big respect for him and his previous generations and the brand, what they do.
So looking back over those 20 years, what's been the hardest part to actually stay in the role for 20 years?
I would summarize that by being consistent and not running into capitalizing on some of the trends that have occurred. You need to be very, very strict in how you deal with the brand and the product development and the use of the brand equity. So I think that that is very challenging because that's, in the end of the day, it's only me that can decide on that. And you have to say no to quite a few things. But I think it pays off. I think we have shown that we have been very consistent in strategy, in distribution, in how we support our partners in relation with suppliers, but also towards the consumer, how we have developed products and stayed true to quality and functionality.
Well, let's come back to that in a little bit. But again, thinking over those 20 years, what's been the most difficult topic over that time that you've had to deal with? Is there something that kind of stands out in your mind? I'm guessing by your face, maybe there is.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we all had, as an industry, very easy years for a long time. From 2008, from the financial crisis and all the way up to COVID, it was a very smooth, very positive, very growth-oriented period where a lot of brands were performing extremely well, where it came a lot of new brands to the industry, a lot of consolidation, a lot of money into the industry. But of course, we were heavily hit by COVID with all the changes that happened during that period where we took a lot of decisions not knowing at all what was right, what was wrong. And I would say COVID and the period sitting distanced from the leadership, from the colleagues, was extremely, for all of us, extremely challenging. But being used to, work as a team and work with product and work with tangible things, that was kind of one of the big challenges in person from a leadership perspective. During those 20 years, quite a few huge mistakes and failures, but that's the same for everyone. I think that's how businesses is run in general. So, but I would say that COVID was really the test of both leadership and the company.
And as you said at the start, arguably the industry is somehow still actually recovering from the aftermath, which when you think about the time frame is shocking in somehow. So I'm sure over those years you've made some unpopular decisions within the team. Is there anything though any decision that you look back on and think that was a really difficult decision to make? It was unpopular maybe with the broader team or with the leadership team, or it doesn't matter who, but do you think, I'm proud that I took that decision and we've, looking back, that was a good decision?
I think I was starting almost answering with a big decision that was unpopular and was failing. That's something you really learn from.
Absolutely.
So I, together with the leadership, was creating a future organization. And we did that during COVID in order to be prepared for after COVID. And that was a centralization idea we had in order to utilize competence and resources from not only one brand, but several brands, and centralizing that piece. That had big impact on a lot of people, both from changing their positions, but also losing their jobs. We failed big time. So it was, first of all, a very time-consuming and very stressful process.
Sure.
And then we start to hire new competencies on distance, not the traditional meeting between four eyes, but actually doing it on distance. And then we started to onboard people on distance, and then we started to run that on distance, collapsed, failed. So we unfortunately lost a lot of good people in the process. We brought in people which had high expectations on the company. We failed to give them the opportunity, and it created cost and slowed us down. So you can imagine failure to 100%. So I think it was a very difficult decision to take. It was very difficult to execute, and it failed.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing.
But do you think it's really interesting, and thank you for sharing, because I'm sure that it's probably quite a painful thing to look back on, because I think it's always those human decisions, when they turn out to be wrong, they're probably the most painful, arguably. But when you look back on that, was it that, if you're being critical, was it that the decision was wrong, or that somehow the execution of the decision was not right?
We have discussed that a lot, because of course it was a tough one to accept as well. That, okay, let's go back to where we were before.
Yeah.
Now, yes, it was the right decision. It would have been the right decision if we take it now, when you can do it properly. But we couldn't execute properly. We couldn't really manage the process and find the probably right people. We couldn't communicate and onboard. So it was a distance thing. And I also think we took on a too big piece of the cake at the same time. So it became too much. So it was execution failure.
Yeah. And so actually then they're probably the things that you learn the most from, right? Because in the end, somehow a decision, it's always probably can be argued either way, and can be very, very personal. But yeah, if it's an execution, then there's for sure lots of learnings, lots of takeaways. So yeah, I'm sure the company's better for it today. But yeah, painful period, I'm sure.
Yep.
So what would you say has been the most valuable piece of advice you've ever been given as a leader? Is there anything that
I had received?
Yeah. Is there anything that stands out?
There are a couple of classic advice I have got during the years, and I have had the honor to be connected to some really wise people that has been running big and successful companies. And then you think you are getting something very complex and very strategic or whatever. But I have of course, a ton of great things from Åke Nordin, the founder. One thing that I always bring with me is do it today. Tomorrow it might be too late. It's just putting like the pressure on acting and executing rather than waiting. Take action, do it. That's a very good thing to just have with you on a daily basis. Another one, which comes from another fantastic man that was running a much bigger company, and I had the chance to sit with him for a couple of hours in the beginning of my role. And he said, now I'm watching your numbers, and you are starting to use K euro, K Swedish kroner. Stop doing that. Stop taking away zeros, because the same second you do that, you lose respect for the money. Keep the zeros, then you understand the scope and the size of the cost. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah. I've never heard it, but do you know what? It really resonates with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a stupid thing, but
small thing.
Yeah. But whenever I'm talking, this is crazy, but whenever I'm talking to candidates in my role as a recruiter, one of the questions is always around compensation. And I always write it down, the full thing, because I don't know, for some reason, I think it's something that's important to that person, irrespective of what it is, in a sense. So I just feel like it's somehow, it's like a respect thing, the way I do it. But yeah, that's really interesting. I've never heard that before.
It is, because nowadays you see a lot of reports and it's like 1.2 M euro.
Yeah.
Okay, that turns to be not that much. You normalize that. So I think that's very healthy. And in a company like ours and many others, profitability is key to everything. And we have grown this company profitable. Our aim is always to be profitable in every single quarter, in every business unit, all the time. If you grow faster, then that comes on the cost of the profitability. So we are very careful and very respectful for money and cost. So I think that has a very strong connection to how we run it and how we look at costs.
Absolutely.
That was an early thing, a small thing, but it has paid off, absolutely.
It's very rare, that sort of thing, that it's something you've never heard.
Yeah.
And I've really never heard that, but it also really resonates, so it's great. So as I mentioned already, you're in a small club of 3 outdoor CEOs that have been doing their role for 20 years and are still in the role. I know this is incredibly difficult to boil it down to one thing, but what would you say has been the secret of being able to still be in the role today after such a long period? Because it's obviously something that doesn't happen very often. And especially the company is a listed company as well. So to your point earlier on about some ownership structures of companies mean that the view is often more short-term than long-term. And oftentimes listed companies could fall within that bracket.
First of all, we have the majority owner of the company is still the founding family, which of course makes it different. It means that if I would have been thrown into private equity, I probably would have been washed out. But with the fact that the family still believes that I do a good job, they trust me. I have been super honest and very straightforward in my relation with the owning family over decades. So I understand the family. I think that's one part of it. The other part, when it comes to having still a very high respect in the company, is that I have been consistent over time. I have been, as I said, very honest, and I have run it with a clear vision that I have kept and continued coming back to, and not changing that direction dramatically. So the organization have trust and feel comfortable that I lead it, and the owners still have strong belief that I do a good job.
Obviously, trust is a key thing there, but I think to your point around that consistency in your approach, and I think especially in today's culture, consistency is maybe not valued in the way that it should be. I think there's always this demand for something new, something different, fast moving, but actually consistency for me, the way I see it, is it's like kind of compound interest. You always get added benefit from the same thing. Now, okay, you have to be on the good path in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Which is important.
Yeah, you need to. And I think it gives you the room for being very innovative and challenging the status quo in other areas. If you have a clear, consistent route where people understand where we are heading, where our partners, whether it is our suppliers or factories or our retailers, if we can just keep our direction and being consistent, then we can really innovate in other areas when it comes to distribution models, to D2C approach, to tech, to all different areas where we can be more aggressive. But having that foundation, then you can do those things more aggressively.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what you talked earlier on about the fact that with the founder, you would travel to Asia back in the early days. But actually from a production point of view now, I see some brands looking more and more actually about nearshoring or even onshoring from a sourcing point of view. How do you see that kind of evolution developing? Is that something that you're kind of looking at? As
you mentioned, we have been in the Far East for a very long time. We have good relations, very strong partnerships, both on Tier 1 and Tier 2 and Tier 3. We have moved around a little bit in the region. We have stayed out of some of the market or countries that are, from a social perspective, not okay, according to us, like Burma or Bangladesh, where we have still a lot to do in order to be secure. Given the impact of the disruption of supply chain, we took a decision and we got a very clear go-ahead from the board that we need to build up manufacturing competence and capacity in our next to our big markets. So Europe is one of them, and the second one is US, of course. So we have been working since COVID, I would say, with building up. We have invested in factories. We have acquired Devold as a brand, which also sits on manufacturing in Lithuania. We have a big stake in a great factory in Bulgaria. We are partnering up with people in Mexico. So that's like the mix, having parts of the business and lowering the risk for both disruption in supply chain, but also having a faster lane for filling up on demand. So I think we are sitting in a quite good position, given that nowadays we have a critical mass of own stores, which means that we can use the capacity and fill up capacity in factories and run production by ourselves to a larger extent, instead of just relying on the short gaps that the suppliers have in Asia in the big factories. So we are mixing it. The good thing with Phoenix Outdoor, which is the listed company that owns Fjällräven, is that we have really strong manufacturing capabilities and competences in the group. Handvag is the footwear company, and they are very skilled in manufacturing. They own their own plants, so to speak, meaning that they can do the real planning. So that is something we are exchanging, because there is a fact that we and many others outsourced early. Then you lose the true manufacturing competence. You rely so deeply on the suppliers. You send over a sketch, a tech pack, and then you hope for the best manufacturing. Then you need to own all the different steps yourself and plan for everything, including all the trims and components and how it works.
Yeah.
Totally different story. But given that we are a group of brands with that skill set,
sure,
we can pull that off.
Obviously, you were kind enough to give me a tour of the building earlier on, and obviously you were showing me the prototyping center that you have here. So great facilities to be able to produce those prototypes that actually then in the end, when you are using Asian suppliers, you're at least able to provide them with something that is of a good quality and much easier for them to be able to
absolutely you're shortening the development time. You become more accurate from the beginning and all those things, but that's I think many outdoor brands are doing the same. It's just that having it in-house, it means that you need to invest in people's time. It takes time to learn to really, we have quite a few people that are very skilled in just sitting in front of a sewing machine and doing prototyping instead of buying that competence. I think that's core to a true outdoor company that is driven by functionality and, based on outdoor activities. You need to understand how to do it yourself and then iterate all the solutions and innovations.
Yeah. Do you ever see a situation where a much higher proportion, because I'm assuming that today it's probably a reasonably small proportion of what you're doing is done more locally, or let's say in Europe or Mexico, as you mentioned. Do you see opportunity to scale that up, or is there obviously then challenge in terms of cost of goods, margin, etc.?
If you do that analysis, lead time versus labor cost in Europe versus tariffs, it's not as big as it was, the gap.
Okay.
Yeah, it becomes more and more reasonable, in particular if you take in risk in the calculation as well, how much risk you take when you're buying so far in advance and you're putting it in inventory and you fix capital in that. So that risk versus all the other parameters. However, competence, labor is limited. It is not easy. That's a fact. You cannot, as an industry, move that much. It's not feasible or possible, I would say. But owning your own factories means that you can at least control that and start to scale from a base. But no, it's not about 50-50. It's rather probably our goal is like controlling 20% in nearby markets.
You mentioned just then that obviously Fjällräven's owned by Phoenix Group, who also owns several other brands, some of which you've brought up already today, and also obviously some multi-brand retailers as well across Europe. And you own your own stores, and obviously you run your own e-commerce as well. So you have, I would say, from a group point of view, a pretty complex kind of channel strategy approach. So at Phoenix Group level, obviously you own multiple brands, own several multi-brand retailers, and you operate your own stores. You have partner stores, you operate your own e-commerce. So you have a very complex, let's say, channel mix as a business. So what's the dynamic of that? How does that kind of affect actually how you operate?
It is a channel which we have touched on before that is unique, I agree, because most brands today have a D2C approach with e-commerce and brand stores. We took a decision way back 2001, which I was not really part of, but I enjoy it now, to acquire multi-brand retailers, which has more than 100 fantastic brands in a mix, together with our own brands, meaning that Handvag has a good position and Fjällräven has a good position and Devold has a good position, but it's not like a monobrand scenario. That gives us a platform for the consumer, a very fair opportunity to compare in between functionality and all different aspects. And also it puts a lot of pressure on us as a brand to develop according to the level that the competitors are on, because otherwise we lose market share in the stores. So it's a great dynamic. We get a lot of input on our products from that perspective. At the same time, running monobrand stores, we have 36 or 37 in US and Canada at this moment. We have a lot of stores in Korea, Taiwan, China, Japan. We also have a couple of brand stores in Europe. All those stores are also contributing, but from a different perspective. But it's a complex mix. Our position as a brand, and I know I share that with Jürgen, for instance, our stores are a service to the consumer, and it's not acting as a competitor to the retailers, because we have a full price approach in our own channels. That's how we work. So it's more of giving what is not available. Of course, we sell the same products every now and then, but the long tail is where we are gaining in our own channels.
Yeah. With all of those different channels and brands, how do you maintain that kind of brand? I don't know whether purity is the right word, but I think you get my point, that kind of focus on the brand and not kind of diluting that because of the complexity of the different channels that you have.
I think it's easier when you have the opportunity to be compared, or you're getting actually heavily compared to the competitors and their strengths. It becomes more clear how you diverse yourself from the others. We also have a tradition to work in our own stores, which is sometimes a very painful experience, given that you have to sell a North Face jacket or a Patagonia pant or a Houdini fleece instead of your own brand, which I think is the ultimate test of how you can, because even if you have developed the product, if you're not managing to sell that to consumer because there are other arguments, then you learn a lot.
Is that something that all employees have to do that?
Yeah.
That's great.
Every employee has to take hunting license. They have to do our winter educations, which takes place every year. They have to participate. And now I'm saying they have to. I would say they enjoy to do.
Sure.
Okay. A Fjällräven Classic, meaning the trekking event somewhere. And on top of that, we really encourage every single person to at least work one day in one of our multi-brand stores.
Yeah.
Because that gives so much versus sitting in front of your computer.
I've heard and implemented the same strategy, but from an own brand store point of view. Mm-hmm. But obviously there are not so many businesses that have the opportunity to do that within a multi-brand environment. But I can really see the value of that. That's great.
Yeah. No, but because own brand, you might fail to convert. The person is walking out without anything. Yeah. But in the multi-brand environment, I would say it's very painful if you don't success. And it's very rewarding when you do. So, it's great memories regardless. So
you've just touched on it actually, but Fjällräven seems to really live by one of its values in terms of getting people outdoors. You just gave the great example there of what you're doing with your team, but obviously also I know consumers join as well. But how, because I feel like that's something that all brands say, but it's clear that you're really kind of living by that. Why is that for you such an important thing to do? Because it's obviously a big investment.
It is absolutely big investment, in particular from people's time, because it takes a lot of resources to pull off safe and exciting events across the globe. We have 7 Fjällräven Classics, which is Sweden is the origin, but then we have in Germany, in Denmark, in Korea, in Chile, Patagonia, and so on. So it is quite a challenging topic and task for people. But having a mission where we are all agreeing on that we aim to inspire people to be in nature, and we have even said move with nature, meaning that you are also in that situation responsible for what you do in nature, so move with, reinforcing that. A mission statement is something that I think you really need to live and not just preach, but actually practice. So we said way back that we should truly bring people out, lowering the different challenges, or helping people from logistics, from all the challenges that beginners and experienced people have to really take that step. So we have over time taken thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of people out in nature, in fragile nature, showing them that nature is fragile. But if you don't disturb and don't destroy, you can be there. But you're also coming back with a better understanding of that nature is fragile. You need to take care of it.
Yeah.
So we see a number of effects when it comes to our work of actually bringing people out to move with nature by doing this. On the other side, there is a great engagement from those people. Those people are our core users globally, and they spread this across different channels. And nowadays, the channels are fantastic, super effective. So our brand comes into a position where people are talking about it as an experience rather than, a brand that is selling products. So I think from just really executing and driving the mission to also generating business, to engage people and taking care of the social part and the environmental part, all that comes together. And we are using, as a company, we are using a compass to take decisions. And that compass is following the same cardinal directions as a standard compass, meaning N for north stands for nature for us. And then you have W for well-being, you have E for economic, and you have south of society.
Okay.
So when we take decisions and we will manage the company, we are always considering all 4 cardinal directions at the same time. If you fail on one of those, you should not do it. But our events where we are bringing people out are actually scoring quite high on all those. So if you do a spider diagram and you dot that in, you can see that this is something that really fulfills pretty much all the different directions for us. So that's a long answer on
but it's great.
Question. Yeah,
it's great. That's I didn't know about the compass. That's that's a really interesting.
It's an easy way of
exactly.
You're sitting there with a great opportunity, and then the E is not coming, or the W is scoring low. How can we increase that, or let's not do it?
As you said, very easy. So also then it kind of to get buy-in into that and to get people to really kind of actually live by it then is pretty straightforward. Yeah. I think oftentimes we have a habit of overcomplicating things like that, and something like that
it's easy to become like big business cases, and you end up with like, let's not do it. I have to say also, when it comes to those events, we use them, of course, to invite and inspire and get people out, but we also use it heavily internally for product testing, for content creation, for educating and onboarding people. But personally, that's the highlight of the year. You can imagine coming there, being outdoors on a trail in fantastic nature, and you meet very demanding customers that are mostly satisfied, but more importantly, you have also a lot of dissatisfied that have input on your product, on the functionality, and how we run things. Yeah. That's such a place to be.
Yeah, it's invaluable, right, to get that kind of captured market of feedback like that. And as you said, because those people really they're your fans, right? They're your
great fans, but also very critical.
Exactly.
And very emotional. Yeah. Because they have connected, they are loyal. Those people are so important for me and for the company. So now I love that. I'm sometimes traveling on those events, it takes away a week from work. But then you need to really reconsider and think it is the ultimate work. Yeah. That's where I do and get the most. So that's how we use it.
Was there a moment since that fateful, I guess, evening, late afternoon in that hut with the founder when he asked you about whether you would one day want to lead the company? Has there been a moment since then where you thought, shit, I can't do this?
No.
Excuse my language.
No.
Where does that, because you're an instant answer, so where does that kind of self-confidence come from, would you say?
Probably from a very good childhood with parents that have supported, but also being demanding. I have a constant drive in everything can always be a little bit better, including myself. So I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to constantly develop, which means that I am living after like the principle that I am a beginner in many areas all the time. I have so much more to learn, and I can always be a little bit better, regardless if it is a presentation in a quarterly report, or if it is on stage on a big kickoff, or if it is during Vasaloppet when I'm skiing from Sälen to Mora. That mindset puts me in a position where I want forward, and it's so much filled with, that journey is so much filled with excitement and opportunities. So even considering anything else or stopping, or it's not part of my mindset. I'm trying to now just talk from my emotions here.
Sure. Oh, it's very powerful. And I think it's, I'll have to ask your team, but it must give confidence, and strong belief in what you're doing as well, which I think, again, in terms of getting people behind you is so important, along with consistency and clear communication, etc. But I think, this is really interesting.
I hope I share that energy. I hope, but you better ask them. That's a good thing to do. Yeah.
So, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to future leaders of the sports and outdoor industry?
First of all, join the industry, and that could be challenging, I would say, because it's a small, sometimes a little bit locked industry. So getting in through contacts, I would say a very good way in is to go through the store from a retail perspective. Doing a good job in a retail store could absolutely give you opportunities. And I'm talking from my own perspective and experience, but I think I share that with a lot of people. But it doesn't mean that you can just do what is expected. You need to do more. Get more curious into different parts in the business and showing up and doing a little bit extra. I think that's key in the beginning. Then we have run a couple of trainee programs over the last 15 years where we have brought in young people straight from a university and maybe 1 or 2 years in some kind of reality. And the tendency is that you are not patient enough. I would recommend people to really show higher patience to how long time it takes to really understand. We have a saying that do not just show how, but know how. Today, it's so easy to get some kind of a surface understanding of things because you just key that into ChatGPT or whatever and you get an answer. But the outdoor industry is so much based on craftsmanship and true understanding of the activity and the consumer and the product. So my strong recommendation is get to know it. Really understand the craftsmanship behind, regardless if you are in marketing or in product or in sales or wherever you are. People are, in general, a little bit too impatient at this moment. I think that's important. I also think it's of high importance, and I have used that myself to a very large extent. Make sure you connect with different age groups and make sure that you talk to the senior people, because you cannot chat GPT what the senior people tells you. Chat GPT will probably not tell you to show the zeros.
For sure not. Maybe after today, though.
maybe after today, exactly. No, but it's just that there are so many great people in the industry, both retired but also active, that I think have so much competence and experience and things to share, but you need to be curious to get that. So that's a very strong recommendation from my side, that get to know some of those people, show interest, and I guarantee that they will share, including myself, because it's such a pleasure to just have this discussion. It reminds you of things that is important, really. Then I believe that having a mindset that is, I think you need, as a person to get into leadership in the outdoor industry, you need to have a mindset of a winning instinct. I think that's something that it's difficult to just apply, but training yourself in convincing yourself that winning is important.
If today was your last day, if you'd had that conversation with somebody a year ago in a hut and you were ready to hand the baton to the next leader of Fjällräven, what would your message be to the team?
I believe strongly that we are building this company for future, and our founder built it for the second generation. Now we are building it for the third, and the third should. So I think permanenting and making things that last doesn't mean just products, even though products are extremely important that they last and that the people are using them for forever. But creating and taking decisions on the basics that is not just for short term, but really that lasts. I think that's my strongest advice. So it doesn't become a too thin foundation that is breaking somewhere.
Well, I think that's a great place to end. Thank you very much, Martin, for taking the time and sharing some great stories and some really good anecdotes. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure the audience will also appreciate all of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. It was a pleasure and also exciting to really look back a little bit and reflect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed all of Martin's stories as much as I did. And if you did, please leave us a comment or a review, and don't forget to subscribe or follow. Next episode, I'm going to be chatting with Celia Garberg-Ree, the CEO of Bergens of Norway. So make sure you follow and keep listening for that coming soon.